Get started. All right, so again, welcome. My name is Tracy Marshall. I serve as the Division Director for Colorado's Division of Paid Family and Medical Leave Insurance. I'm joined today by several members of our technology and policy teams to help answer your questions. Today, we are going to focus on how to navigate the registration process if you are a third-party administrator or a TPA, or if you work with a TPA to manage your business operations. We will be opening up for questions when we get towards the end, and we will answer as many questions as we can. Before we get started, here is some quick housekeeping for you. This presentation will be available on famli.colorado.gov shortly following the webinar, and we'll also share it with everyone who is registered. Please ask your questions in the Q&A function of the Zoom meeting, as the chat has been disabled. You can find recordings of our previous webinars on our YouTube channel, and that covers a variety of different topics. A quick look at the agenda that we'll be covering today. So we will be looking at My Family Plus Employer, things that TPAs need to know, how to communicate these changes to your clients. We'll look at 3 different ways for you to register. We'll look at the resources that we have available for our TPAs, and then we'll go through some FAQs and then the live questions. So to begin, TPAs will need to register and create a TPA account before registering the employer clients that they serve. We're not going to spend a lot of time today on registration. If you haven't registered yet, you can start by navigating to the famli.colorado.gov page and find the My Family Plus Employer page. On the My Family Plus Employer page, you'll find the button to log in. Then you'll see step-by-step instructions for employers, local government employers, and TPAs. We have how-to videos, and we actually just added a new how-to video specifically for TPAs that may need support when they're doing the bulk registration for their clients. We also have additional quick reference guides for our TPAs, file specifications for TPAs, and sample file templates. If you move on, and you'll see here, this is what the My Family Plus Employer Welcome page looks like. If you're visiting the page for the first time, you'll need to create an account, and you'll click on the Create an Account, which is underneath the Sign In with Login.gov button. If you've already created your TPA account, you will click Sign In with Login.gov to sign into My Family Plus Employer. All right, so let's move on to the ways that you can register your clients. So some of the important things that you do need to know about registering your clients as a TPA. All employers do need to be registered and have an account created with My Family Plus Employer before the first premium payments are due on April 30th, 2023. TPAs can register on behalf of their employer clients.
It looks like we lost Tracy Marshall for a moment. Tracy, are you back?
I think so. I'm not sure what's happening with my system. I apologize. So TPAs, you can register on behalf of your employer clients. Please make sure you notify the employers that you serve to let them know if you'll be registering on their behalf, and that just avoids any confusion for them. If a client registers their business in My Family Plus Employer on their own, you will need to link your TPA account to their employer account in order to submit wage data and premium payments on their behalf. You can confirm that the accounts have been successfully linked after you use API or upload a bulk registration file that has the information referencing that employer account. A bulk registration file can be used for a single employer account or multiple employer accounts. This process will create the proper TPA relationship between the employer account and your TPA account. Please review the user guide for TPAs if you need more details. So we will continue to emphasize this throughout, but please communicate with your clients. The FAMLI call center is receiving a large number of inquiries from business owners wondering if they should register themselves or if their TPA will be registering on their behalf. Different TPA companies are taking different approaches to how they're doing their client registration. So we are going to be referring them back to their TPA for the best process for employers moving forward. Please advise your clients who intend to register on their own to notify you when they complete the registration process so that you can then complete the bulk upload or the integration via the API to establish that TPA employer relationship. If that connection is not established, your TPA organization will not be able to submit wages or make payments for that client. I'm now going to hand you over to Anne from our technology team, and she'll go into this in a bit more detail for you.
Why, thank you, Tracy. Hi, everyone. For those I have not met, my name is Anne Dooley. I'm a product owner on the My Family Employer Plus Premiums side. And so let's jump in. So we've got 3 different ways that you'll register your clients. The first 2 ways can be done through the portal from your TPA dashboard. You'll just need to navigate under the Manage My Account section. And then our recommendation is if you have a small number of clients, you may choose to just go ahead and manually enter them individually in the portal. The process is going to be super similar to how you went through and registered your own TPA organization. If numbers are on your side, if you have a large number of clients, we do want you to do a bulk upload, and you can do that through the portal. And the third registration option is via a JSON API. We've got API specifications out on the portal at family.colorado.gov under the employers section, and then you can select TPAs. All right, so we're going to walk through a little bit about the manual registration process. We are getting some questions, so we'll kind of dive into that. One of the questions, will I know if my client is already registered for FAMLI? If you're registering your client individually, you will see that the client is already registered in the portal when you go to search for the client's FEIN. If they're registered, you will be prompted in the portal to contact the account administrator to request access for your account. You can resolve this by doing a bulk registration. If that's not possible, FAMLI's next release before the end of Q1, we will set up functionality so your client employer will be able to link your TPA organization to their employer organization. Or if those things aren't sounding good, you can work with your client employer directly and the FAMLI contact center to get this completed. So if you have clients that want immediate access to their account, you can add them as a user in the bulk registration by navigating to that account and manually adding a user. Alternatively, you can add users to the account during the manual registration process. It's important to note that your clients don't necessarily need to have access right away. If you as a TPA are going to be submitting wages, paying premiums on their behalf. The My Family Plus employer won't be used to manage claims and requests and benefits. Those things are going to be available closer to 2024 and will be managed in a different system. Cool. So if your client has not registered, again, going through the manual registration process, you can go ahead and register them individually through My Family Plus Employer. You'll log into your TPA account, go to your dashboard, click Add an Organization, look for the Organization Details section, and select the correct organization type. After you select the organization type, you'll need to choose Company Administrator as your role. And then when you see, are you a third party registering on behalf of this organization, you will select yes to continue. The rest of the process will look familiar to your own registration. Please fill in your client's contact info in the fields as required and click submit. You and your client will receive an email confirmation of your client's registration. And just a note, if you are bulk registering your client will not receive an invitation to join as a user on the account. Even if you do include their information on the bulk file, that user is not going to receive an account or an email at this time. All right. Now, if we shift gears a little bit to bulk registration, if you're a TPA with a large number of clients, you'll definitely want to register these accounts instead of manually entering them. You will find the file specifications you need, including a sample bulk registration template for both the CSV and XML file on the TPA page at famli.colorado.gov. A bulk registration file can be used for both single employer accounts or multiple employer accounts. So once you've got your CSV or XML file ready, you can go ahead and bulk register your clients. You'll definitely need to log into the My Family Plus Employer portal and then navigate through the TPA dashboard. Much like on the screen here, you'll see the bulk register button. You can go ahead and select that link, and then go ahead and upload the files and select the file you want to upload. All right. This screenshot here is an upload file dialog box will open and show you the upload status. When the upload is complete, go ahead and select done in the dialog box and check the box at the bottom of the screen to certify the accuracy of your document and click submit. When the bulk registration upload is complete, a screen will pop up to tell you if it was successful. You will also receive an email notifying you that the upload was successful. Then once the file has been processed by the system, you can navigate into your TPA dashboard and confirm all your clients have been uploaded successfully. If you have clients that have already registered, this is also where you can confirm that the accounts are linked. In the portal, select Manage Accounts tab to confirm that you've successfully added and or linked your clients. If you have any questions, you can review the user guide for TPAs for more details. Well, we hope that your upload will be successful. We also understand that that's not always the case. If your upload is unsuccessful, you will be emailed an error message. For a list of error messages, what they mean, you can see the systems generated error messaging section of page 39 of our TPA user guide. The third way that we offer registration is through the API registration process. It's super technical, so what I'd say is I'll send you over to the famli.gov, famlicolorado.gov site to go ahead and get that information. And I think Michelle's hooking us up with some links as well as we go through this.
All right, and thank you so much. So we're
Hey, Tracy, it looks like we lost your audio. I'm going to actually hand it over to Evan Grimes. Evan, if you could read the questions and Ann will answer these scripted questions and then we'll open it up for live Q&A.
Absolutely, no problem. So first question for you, Ann. How should a TPA register? Do I need to register twice? And do I need two email addresses?
Thanks, Evan. So as a best practice, we recommend that TPAs do use a second unique email address for their employer account to mitigate the risks associated with peer wages being visible to the user who's managing client wage information in the family system. If your organization has different people responsible for managing family program compliance for your own TPA business versus managing clients, they should have 2 separate logins. If you're responsible for both, you can use one email login. We have instructions for both in our TPA quick reference guide for TPAs with Colorado employees.
Great, thanks. So how do I link my account to a client's account that has already registered?
So to answer that, during the manual registration process, you'll be asked to search for your client's business. If your client is already registered, it will tell you that the business has been registered. You will need to use the bulk registration function, referencing this client to ensure the TPA employer relationship is made between the 2 accounts. Or as we talked about before, you can kind of manually request that access. If you have a client, oh, sorry, there's a little bit more. If you want that, if you have a client that wants to access their family account, they can be individually registered as a user. So you could go into the portal and add them as a TPA. Whoa.
Sorry for jumping the gun on you there. So next, can an employer be connected to multiple TPAs?
Technically, yes. What we understand is that employers will shift between TPAs throughout time, and a previous TPA may be responsible for current wage reports and payments. Adding new TPAs and ending relationships with old TPAs will be a new functionality coming out before our next release, before the end of Q1.
Thank you. So let's say I'm a TPA, or I'm an attorney, or I'm both, and I'm representing a local government. Can I register a local government that has voted to opt out and upload their documents on their behalf?
Yes. The short answer is yes. The longer answer is when you log into your TPA account, registering the local government as you would other clients. However, when asked, are you a TPA registering on behalf of this organization, select no. This won't create a TPA client relationship. The local government will be registered and you will be able to upload their opt-out documents. Now, attorneys who represent local governments who have voted to opt out should register as if they are the company admin of the local government in order to opt out for them. Attorneys should also select no to the TPA question, so that account has the functionality to upload required opt-out letter. Local governments who have voted to opt out should not be included in the TPA bulk registration file. The system does not allow you to bulk opt out multiple government agencies at a time.
Thank you. And let's say I'm a TPA and I want to register my client employers. Where do I go to find out how to do that?
Sure. TPAs can either register their clients individually or through the bulk upload process. Please check out the TPA user guide step-by-step, file specifications, and the file templates on the TPA page at famli.colorado.gov. All right.
So I'll go ahead and wrap things up for Tracy. First, I wanted to direct you all to a few of our online resources. I'm sure we will be dropping some links in the chats, but we do have among those resources file specifications for TPAs, file specifications to bulk upload multiple employers, API specifications to bulk register multiple employers, My Family Plus employer user guide for TPAs, a quick reference guide regarding how to register your TPA as an employer with Colorado employees, a quick reference guide regarding how to grant access to your clients, and file specifications for TPAs. And lastly, for those who are curious, we do have ACH credit specifications for those planning to use ACH payments. And if they're not there already, I believe that link will be posted in the chat as well. So now we do want to get to as many questions as possible. And if we don't get to your question today, you always have the opportunity to engage with us at the email address on your screen, on social media, or by phone Monday through Friday between the hours of 8 a.m. and 4 p.m. So thanks, everybody. And let's go ahead and open it up for some Q&A.
Thank you, Evan and Anne. I'm going to try to get to as many questions as we can with the rest of our time. I'm going to start with one from Megan. I'm going to hand this over to you, Evan. Can large companies opt out with their disability insurance? My husband's company is based in Texas, but he works in Colorado and his HR department has not been able to opt out. They have great disability insurance. Are they getting the wrong info?
I'm not sure what info they are getting, but I can say that virtually all disability insurance policies will fall short of family benefit equivalency. And that's just largely because of the extensive benefits that are offered under the family program, including leave for things not related to disability, like safe leave with regard to domestic violence, and military exigency leave with regard to military deployments. So any employer that wishes to meet their obligations under family through a private plan has to apply to the family division for approval of a private plan. And I believe we anticipate accepting some applications in February of this year, if I'm not mistaken. Does that sound about right, Jessica?
That sounds about right. We're hoping to opening that up by end of Q1. So stay tuned for those announcements. As you haven't already, please sign up for our newsletter so you can get alerted once those private plan applications become available. I have a question here for Anne. Beth is asking, does a TPA have capability to make payment on behalf of the employer?
Yes. The ACH specifications that Evan just mentioned will be for bulk payments that you can do through the banking systems, or you will be able to log. I should start back up. As long as the TPA link has been identified between the client employer and the TPA, the following is accurate. You will be able to make a bulk payment through the ACH specs that we talked about through the banking systems, or you can log into the portal and navigate to that individual client employer if you need to make just like an individual specific payment for one of your client employers. There's also a mail-in check option, and you can find that information on the portal too. I think that covers it, Jess.
Thanks, Anne. Another one here from Chelsea. Does this mean that TPAs cannot make payments without TPA access to employers?
Without the access, you won't be able to complete the wage report in order to get the calculation. So it is imperative that you have that set up so that you can do the wage reporting, receive the calculations, and then make the payments.
Thank you, Anne. Let's see. We have a couple questions about the slides and the screenshots being available. We will email these out to all of our participants and registrants later today. They'll also be available on our website, on our webinars page. Here's a question for Evan. If we have a different number of employees each month, does the employer need to be matched? Like January has 8 employees, February has 10 employees, and March is back down to 9 employees. Does this employer need to match just February or what?
This is a great question, and it's really important. Employer size is calculated upon registration and annually thereafter in the first quarter of the first calendar quarter of the year. So for 2023, employers to calculate their size look back to all of 2022, and they identify the number of workers who were employed during 20 or more weeks throughout the year. If that number for 2022 is 10 or above, then they are in that employer matching category. If that number is 9 or below, then they are not in the employer matching category for all of 2023. And then they won't do another employer count until 2024.
Thanks, Evan. We have another anonymous question who is asking, we have a client who manually files their quarterly payroll reports, paper copies. Will they be able to do this for family reporting? The answer is yes. We are currently developing a paper form that employers can submit, fill out and submit and mail into family if you don't prefer to use My Family Plus Employer online. Let's see. Here's one from Shayna for Evan. How can an S Corp owner, the only employee of business, cancel their account if they've already registered? And maybe this is better suited for Ann or Corey.
So the question, so regardless of business stature, they've registered and they need to unregister, if you will?
Yes, and I guess we should clarify, if the S Corp owner is the only employee of the business and considered a self-employed individual, they're not required to participate. They can voluntarily participate if they want to, but if they already registered and want to cancel that account, how do they do that?
Today, you'll need the support of the Family Contact Center. So you'll need to call in to work through that change in status. We are working towards adding additional functionality in the portal to handle that type of scenario, along with hopefully never business closures and things of that nature. But if that needed to be adjusted today, you will definitely need the support of the contact center to complete that on our side.
Thanks, Anne. Here's another one from Romasia for Anne. Is there a maximum number for the CSV file upload? I had 2,500 plus employers on my list and it kept saying critical error. I succeeded by uploading them in batches.
That's really interesting that you received that error message. We can accept up to a 2 gigabyte file. And what we were trying to calculate is, I think that would be like million or million plus records. So if we want to further explore it, we can definitely go through the contact center and then dig into that a little bit. It should definitely be handling 2,500. And we've seen that. We've had a handful that have been into the thousands. So I'm sorry you had that experience.
We have a question here from Ruth about PEOs. How do we set up an account for a PEO? We currently file one return under the PEO's account number, which includes all our clients on our return. Do we need to have our clients all open an account for PFML, aka FAMLI, even though all the withholding and SUTA is reported under the PEO's accounts?
So we've started to have a couple conversations on this topic of TPAs that have PEO employee or PEO clients and then their client employers. And the current approach that we're taking is it's going to depend on how you're going to do your wage reporting. If all of those employees, regardless of their company that they work for, are going to be filed under the PEO's FEIN, then just that PEO's FEIN can be registered. All employees can be wage reported under that FEIN. If there is the PEO's customer, so your customer's customer that needs to be filed, then we're going to need to have that next level of that client employer registered in the system, so that when you do your wage reporting, you can file the right employees under the right FEIN. Hopefully I've covered that, but we can definitely set up more time to discuss that, and maybe just we take that offline and maybe try to do a supplemental training. Not that I'm signing us up for extra things, but I'll stop talking.
Thank you, Anne. We have a question here from our Maricela. Is there a presentation on setting up Family in QuickBooks? The answer is yes, there is. You can find that on our webinars page. We hosted a joint webinar with QuickBooks last month. You can find that webinar and their presentation. We've also got links out to Intuit's blog, which has additional resources if you use QuickBooks. And here's a question from Brandy that I'm going to hand over to Evan about employer size. I have 5,000 employees across 20 different states. Only one employee is in Colorado. Do the employees all have to be in Colorado?
That's a great question. I think what she's essentially asking is, for the purpose of determining employer size, do we look at number of Colorado employees, or do we look at total number of nationwide employees? And the answer is the latter. We would look at total number of nationwide employees. So such an employer with 5,000 around the country, but only one in Colorado has, for purposes of FAMLI, 5,000 employees. But only one of those employees, the employee in Colorado, can have their wages, subject to premiums and would be eligible for family benefits.
Thank you, Evan. Here's another semi-related question. If an employee works in multiple states, are all state wages subject to family or just the Colorado wages?
So this is where it gets a little bit trickier. If an employee works in multiple states, including Colorado, and that work in other states is only, incidental, temporary, that sort of stuff, and their work is primarily in Colorado, then all of their wages will be subject to family premiums because they will be considered localized in Colorado. If they are primarily located and working in another state, and Colorado's the one that's just sort of incidental, then they're not localized in Colorado, and they wouldn't be subject to premium liability and wouldn't be eligible for benefits. Where it gets tricky is where they're not localized anywhere in particular. If that's the case and they work in Colorado and in multiple other states, but no regular state, no state is primarily where they work, then we look at where the employer's base of operations is. And in that circumstance, if the employer's base of operations is in Colorado and the employee is working some in Colorado, some in other places, but no primary location in other places, then that employee's wages would be subject to premiums as well, and they'd be eligible for benefits. But broadly, when we're making that determination of whether or not you're localized in Colorado, if you are localized in Colorado, then all of your wages are subject to premiums.
Thanks, Evan. I have another one here for you from Beth. Do pastors that are not receiving directions on how to do their job, are they considered self-employed, and are they included?
So they very well might be considered self-employed. It really turns on the application of the definition of employee under the FAMLI Act. That definition is very similar to other employee definitions under other sources of Colorado employment law. But basically, there's a very broad definition of employee, and then there's a narrow two-prong exception. An individual is not an employee if two things are true. One, they are primarily free from control in the performance of their work. And two, they are performing that work as part of their own independent trade. And so it will sometimes be the case that pastors are free from that control in performing their pastoral duties, and that is their independent trade and business is being a pastor. So if that's the case, then that individual is not an employee. They would be self-employed, and their participation would be entirely optional.
Thanks, Evan. Here's one from Katie that I'm going to hand over to Anne. If the employer has payroll processed through a payroll company, is the payroll company the TPA, or as the accounting firm, are we the TPA?
I don't know if I'm in a position to answer that. I think that would be a business decision between those two entities to determine who's going to report to the state and complete the premiums.
Thanks, Anne. So Katie, the short answer is that either of them can be your TPA for FAMLI, and either of them can register you and submit payment on your behalf. It's just a matter of you coordinating with your payroll company and your accounting firm, which one is willing and able to do that for you. Or maybe one just registers for you and the payroll company submits payments. Yeah, so loaded answer there. Here's another one about TPAs. In the FAMLI portal for TPAs, will the function of an alpha sort by company name be added?
I don't know if I have that answer to that question. So you've bulk uploaded all the files, and then that we just want to make sure that the sorting is not, it is completed alphabetically. I can look into that. I don't have a confirmed answer for you.
Thanks, Anne. Here's another question about S
Oh,
corps.
I take that back. Sorry, Sarah. Or Sarah, Jessica. I think we have it. It's a field that you search for in one area, and then in the list we can double check in the list view how it's looking. Okay, I'm done.
Here's another question about S corps. Is the over 2% shareholder insurance taxable for family? Evan, can you take that?
Is the over 2% shareholder? Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure what the question is asking off the top of my head. So I would request the asker to send us a detailed email with that question so that we can look at it and give a detailed answer back. But the broad answer is if it's wages under UI, then the answer will be yes. But I think we could be a little bit more helpful. So if they would feel free emailing us, I'd love to have a chance to give a more helpful answer.
Thanks, Evan. We have a question here from Sean. Would the employee register or the TPA? I think you mean the employer or the TPA, but the shorter answer is either. And maybe you can elaborate on the capabilities of employers registering themselves or having their TPA do it and connecting those accounts.
Sure. In our discovery and our build process, we moved with this idea of this passive enrollment where the TPAs have the ability to register on behalf of their client employers. In comparison to some other states, it just helped reduce some obstacles and barriers of entry to get into the system. So we designed and built in mind where the TPAs can take on the bulk of that burden to complete registration because they'll be managing the wages, the wage reporting and the premium payments. But both options are viable. Nothing is preventing the employer to register nor the TPA to register. Not that they probably want more phone calls either, but you can definitely reach out. I would encourage you to reach out to your TPA if you wanted to find out if somebody has a particular approach they want to take.
Thanks, Evan. Here's one for Evan. If the business is formed in Colorado, LLC registered in Colorado, but all the employees are in another state, is family required?
And the answer there would be no. If a business is based out of Colorado but employs no one in Colorado, and that means engages nobody to perform work within the state of Colorado, then they're not a Colorado employer, and they're not obligated to do anything with regard to family.
Thanks, Evan. And here's another one about S corps. If you are an S corp and give yourself a paycheck, but you also have other employees, are you then, as the business owner, also subject to the 0.45% deduction like the other employees, or would they still be considered self-employed? Therefore, no need to deduct the 0.45% from the business owner, just the employees they have.
It could be the latter. It will often be the case that a business owner satisfies the two-prong exception to the definition of employee, and therefore would be considered self-employed and wouldn't have to participate in family. And that business does employ other individuals that satisfy the definition of employee.
Thank you, Evan. Here's one for Anne. Can we as TPAs export a list of all our employers with their legal name, FEIN, and family ID?
One, they have to be registered in this. You'll have to register them or link them in the system. But like this idea of like a data exchange, we're not quite there yet. It is in our roadmap, and just trying to look through where it would fit in our development cycles to be able to build up a data exchange of sorts where you might be able to pull a report out of the portal like you just described.
Thank you, Anne. And here's one from Charles for you, Anne. Just to confirm, the bulk register upload is used for both registering the employer and adding a previously registered employer as a TPA. The only difference in the file is I would need to add the employer TIN, and this will add the employer under my TPA.
So the bulk upload file will both accommodate new registered employers, so nobody that's previously registered in the system, and then create that linkage if there is an employer with that same FEIN already existing in the system. So all the attributes will still need to be filled out, but that same file will fill in the gap if they're registered but not linked. Or if they're not registered, it'll register them as an employer and then also link them to your TPA account.
Thank you, Anne. I think you might be breaking up. Here's one from Renee. How do we opt out an employer from FAMLI? Anne, are you able to take that, or can Corey H take that?
Took us off, or I took myself off video. Maybe we'll see if that helps. So a private employer looking to opt out of the program is as we mentioned earlier, it will be available in the next upcoming release. Right now, you would only be able to register that employer and stop. We don't have the ability to do the private plan application is coming to a theater near you soon.
Thank you, Anne. Evan, you can answer this one. What is the wage cap on this?
It's the same as the Social Security wage cap, which I believe for this year currently is $160,200 a year. Don't quote me on that, but yeah, it mirrors the Social Security wage base.
Thank you, Evan. And here's one for Anne from Deborah. I registered a company under my email, not as a TPA. Will I have an issue setting myself up as a TPA using the same email address?
As long as the one record in the system is set up as org type TPA/PEO, and then the other org type set up in the system as an employer record, you can have, wait, I don't think I answered that question right. We were asking about duplicate emails, not duplicate FEINs. So duplicate emails as a registered user would not be allowed, but under the same email/username, you can be associated to multiple employer TPA accounts.
Yeah, and to follow up on that, and to answer that question, you can use your single email for multiple organizations. You'll just have to add an organization in the portal upon registration. So you can have an employer account as well as a TPA account on the same email.
Thank you both. I'm going to move on to a question from Diana for Evan. For a construction company that may have employees in Colorado for 6 months, then move on to another state, how would that work? We are in Colorado only if we get a project, and it is usually for a limited time.
So if a business operates in another state and only operates in Colorado temporarily and tangentially, incidentally to their operations in another state, then it's quite likely that those employees then would be localized in another state, even though they perform some incidental or temporary work in Colorado, in which case they wouldn't be covered by FAMLI.
Thank you. Here's one from Margaret. For initial upload, how does the number of employees get reported? Actual account or 10 plus? Anne, can you take that, or Corey?
In the initial upload, sorry, I was trying to follow along and I can't find it in the Q&A chat. Can you repeat it one more time, Jess?
Sure. For the initial upload, how does the number of employees get reported? Do I put in the actual number of employees, or should I just put in 10 plus?
It should just be the 2 to 9 or 10 plus. However it looks on the website. We don't need a specific count.
And 10 plus or 9 or fewer. Because even if you have one employee, you're liable. Thank you, guys. Here's one from Jessica. With the passive enrollment for registration by payroll provider, does the employee need to go in and complete any information on their registration?
No, the TPA can handle, as long as they have all the right information, they can go ahead and handle that reporting. And there's no required current process or anything in place that really needs to require an employer to get into the portal as well. For as long as they're the TPA is doing the wage reporting and the premium payments and all that fun stuff, it's not a requirement for the employers to create an account and gain access.
Thank you, Anne. Here's an anonymous question. If you use Gusto or QuickBooks, my screen just jumped, for payroll, and they have stated that they will submit payments to the state directly, is there anything else we need to do on our end?
Gus, I guess if they've acknowledged and confirmed that they will be doing both wage reporting and premiums payments, I don't, off the top of my head, see anything else you would need to do I guess work with that particular organization to confirm those activities had been completed.
Thank you, Anne. Go ahead, Jude.
For any TPA, like first in the case of Gusto and QBO, to make a payment on behalf of their employers, the key thing that they need to have is your family account number to make sure that that payment correctly gets credited to your account.
And they'll get that account number when they register on your behalf. So if they're registering on your behalf, they should have that account number.
Right.
Okay. Here's another one, a good question here. If an employer changes a payroll service provider, does a new service provider need to complete a new registration for their new client, or would they take over TPA and link to the existing account?
Sure. We talked about this with our NPRC group, which is a handful of TPAs. We definitely acknowledge that this is going to happen for a multitude of reasons. So your employer account will remain the same in the family system, and then the TPA linkage, if you will, is where the edits will be made, where we'll transition services from one TPA to another. The things are going to get could require some overlapping based on when that transition's made. So previous TPA may need to make payments and wage reports on an already past quarter, and then the next one is picking it up. So we have that design build in mind and can support that transition within the system. And it won't be a new registration process. It'll be a relationship change.
Thank you, Anne. Here's a question for Evan. Are shareholders in a C Corp required to deduct from the employee paycheck?
I'm starting to sound like everybody's favorite broken record, but it depends on whether or not you satisfy the definition of employee under the FAMLI Act. So again, almost everybody's an employee unless they meet that narrow two-part exception. Both have to be satisfied in order to be considered a non-employee. And that is, the individual is primarily free from control and direction in the performance of their work, and they're performing that work as part of their own independent trade or business. If both of those things aren't true, or if one or both of them are not true, then you've got an employee, and they will be treated accordingly under FAMLI.
Thank you, Evan. And here's another one about S Corp owners. S Corp owners that receive a W-2 pay unemployment premiums, whether or not they are free from control or performing their independent trade. It sounds like for a family, these same wages would only be subject to FAMLI if they opt in.
That's generally going to be true. And my only pause is I'm not just going to conclude that all anybody with a business ownership is considered self-employed, because that's just not true. But correct, it may be the case that S Corp owners or other business owners issue themselves a paycheck and a W-2 and treat themselves as employees for tax purposes. But what controls whether or not you're an employee under the FAMLI program is the definition of employee under the FAMLI Act. And so it will often be the case that business owners don't have to deduct any FAMLI premiums from their own paychecks. And the only way that they would do that is if they voluntarily decide to opt in as a self-employed individual.
Thanks, Evan. And I do just want to make it clear that if you are 100% considered a self-employed individual, you don't have to take any action to opt out. You only have to do something to opt in if you'd like to. And even then, you don't need to take any action until benefits become available in 2024. But if you are considered a self-employed individual and you know you don't want to participate in FAMLI, you don't need to take any action to opt out. You don't need to register. You don't need to do anything. But that's only if you know you are considered a self-employed individual and you don't have any employees. I wanted to get to a question about counting employees, but now I lost it. Okay, here's one for Evan from Kristen. This article states if they only work 1 day per week, but I'm still confused. If the employee doesn't work in a week, then are they counted in the week that they didn't work?
So what we're looking at is technically whether or not they were employed during the week. And this is reflected in our premiums rules. But basically, if someone either performs work for an employer during a week, or they're on leave during that week with the expectation that they're going to come back to active employment after that leave, whether that's sick leave, vacation, disciplinary suspension, paid or unpaid, whatever, then they're also considered employed. So again, the question is, were they employed during the week, either by working or by being on leave?
Thank you, Evan. Here's one from Luz. If the work scheduled is December 25th through December 31st, but the pay period is January 6, 2023, this deduction applied for 2023, or is it 2022? I think what she's asking is if the first pay period of this year should have that deduction if it includes wages from 2022. Evan, can you explain?
Absolutely, yeah, and this is a common question. This will apply now, and it also applies for future wage reporting when you talk about, for example, wages where a pay period straddles the end of a calendar quarter. We're looking at the date the wages were paid, not the date that the work was performed or the date that they earned the wages. So if an employer issues a paycheck in 2023, regardless of when those wages were earned, it's 2023 status that makes it subject to premiums liability.
Thanks, Evan. And we're answering a lot of questions here, guys. We're blowing through these. I know we've talked about this before, but I'm going to ask Juliet's question. Everything I have seen says Colorado wages. I just saw a question that said all wages earned by employee working in Colorado, regardless of the state, work should be included. Could you send a link to confirm that? Juliet, if we don't have that link handy, it's in our rules somewhere specifically, but if you want to send us an email, we can send you that site to those specific rules. Unless Evan, David, anyone else on my team has those rules handy and can drop those in the chat or directly to Juliet, that would be helpful.
I can at least like direct, everybody can find all of our rules on our proposed and adopted rules website. And then as far as identifying Colorado status for your employees, which would therefore subject all of their wages to premiums, that's in the premiums rules. I want to guess it's at section 1.5.4.b. I'm not 100% certain, but I'm sure we can get a link dropped in there. But if you go to our website and you look at the top and you click on proposed and adopted rules, you can scroll to our premiums rules and find that in there.
Thanks, Evan. And Michelle has dropped the rules page into the chat for anyone who wants to head on over there, as well as the premium rules. Thank you, Michelle. We have a couple questions here from Megan about QuickBooks. We set up the payroll items in QuickBooks, but we are not seeing QuickBooks automatically calculating the taxes. We have had to manually enter the tax for each employee for now. Do you know if QuickBooks will be updating and doing it manually eventually, or do we need to keep doing it manually? I know we've dropped in the chat previously our webinar with QuickBooks, and then on our webinars page, we also have a link out to QuickBooks blog post where they have some FAQs and some different step-by-step instructions for their different offerings for their clients. I can't speak on behalf of QuickBooks, so I don't know what their plans are and what their capabilities are for your specific relationship with them. But if you do have questions, I would recommend you reach out directly to QuickBooks. Another question here about employee headcount. I'm confused about the employee headcount. It says it's updated annually for the quarterly report. Does the employer still need to be provided employee social security numbers and wage information?
For the quarterly wage reports, we do require employee social security number and wage report information. For the Colorado employees, if you span across multiple states, we're not looking for their data. So I'm not sure if I covered that. In the registration process, we will capture the employee headcount, and that will help determine the calculations of if employee and employer are both contributing, or just the employee are contributing.
And that happens upon initial registration, and then once a year in the first quarter, every year thereafter, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong, Evan or Ann, but you will need to update your employee headcount once a year, correct?
That's the game plan.
Thank you. Here's a question about Juliet. May I ask a question about the file format for reporting? Is an amended return going to be a replacement file, or will that have special rules, differences only, etc.?
We are actively working through the amendment process. So more to come on that. I don't want to state like factually one way or the other of how that exact approach is going to be taken.
Okay, we are just running low on time, so I think we can get in one more question before we sign off. From Tracy, I'm reviewing the CSV bulk registration document. Should the relationship start date be 1/1/2023, or when they became our clients, or when they started having employees in Colorado?
It's flexible, I guess would be the short answer. You can definitely default to 1/1/2023. If your database extracts like when the relationship started, there's no harm in the system to receive that data because we're focused on 2023 moving forward.
Thank you, Anne. We are at 12 o'clock and have reached our time. Thank you all for joining us here today. We got to as many questions as we can. I know there are a few that have remain unanswered, but if you want to follow up with us, please reach out to us via email, and we will get to those as soon as we can. We'll also be sending out a recording of this session along with the slide deck and all of the links that we provided in the chat later today. So keep an eye out for that, and thank you all for joining.